Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in a Johnson edition. We turned out a poem 614, In Falling Timbers Buried. Now, in many ways, we're back to the poem of 566 that we've already studied together. You guys will maybe remember this one. A dying tiger moaned for drink. I hunted all the sand. I caught the dripping of a rock and bore it in my hand. His mighty balls in death were thick, but searching I could see a vision on the retina of water and of me. 'Twas not my blame who sped too slow. 'Twas not his blame who died while I was reaching him, but 'twas the fact that he was dead. Now here we have another theodicy. That is to say, why must there be pain and suffering in this world? Why must bad things happen? Emily will use the phrase, a baffling earth that we live in. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you worked through our set of introductory comments. I'm hopeful that you've been with us already through the previous 613 poems. We just finished with 613. They shut me up in prose. Now, in this poem, you have a word picture of a man who is dying underneath, partially buried, and is trying to be rescued. In falling timbers buried, there breathed a man. Outside the spades were plying, the lungs within. Could he know they sought him? Could they know he breathed? Horrid sand partition, neither could be heard, neither slacked the diggers. But when spades had done, oh reward of anguish, it was dying then. Many things are fruitless till 'tis a baffling earth, but there is no gratitude like the grace of death. Now, notice we're in timbers that have fallen from a fire maybe or something like that, and you've got this breathing man who's buried. He can hear outside the spades trying to dig him out, right? And of course, he in his own predicament is trying to breathe his lungs within. If only he is really the phraseology before the word could, if you want to write that. If only he could know they sought him. If only they could know he breathed. And then you've got this word, horrid, sand partition. Put the word but right before horrid, and it works rather well. By the way, horrid comes, we saw it in 444 and in 585. But notice, neither could be heard. Neither slack the diggers, so they keep looking to try and save him. But when spades had done, oh, reward of anguish. You'll remember in 241, Emily said, I like a look of agony, because I know it's true. Men do not sham convulsion, nor stimulate a throat. The eyes glaze once, and that is death, impossible to feign. The beads upon the forehead by homely anguish stung. Oh, reward of anguish. It was dying then. Many things are fruitless. The key word maybe of this poem is fruitless. 'Tis a baffling earth. Are you ready for this? She only uses the word baffling one time in all of her poetry, and it's right here, right now. The earth is baffling. In other words, there are things that happen. We cannot understand why. We can't comprehend them. But there is no gratitude. By the way, this theodicy leads us back, of course, to the book of Job. Why in the Bible? Why must there be pain and suffering? There is no gratitude like the grace of death. I told you guys, she uses the word grace in 54 of her poems and the word death in 135 of her poems. There is no gratitude like the grace of death. In other words, it was graceful that he passed so that he at least made it. He didn't have to deal with any more pain. At 2a, I think the message here is sometimes we can't stop suffering. At 2b, again, this use of the word baffling and baffling earth, I think, speaks directly to Emily's theodicy. At 3a, to relate this to a contemporary, you guys will maybe remember when we did all of the poems of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, the Deathbed Edition. And you'll remember when we did Song of Myself, passage 33. Now this is amazing that two contemporaries who never met each other, never read each other's work, this is how Walt Whitman says it in Song of Myself, passage 33, that precious passage. We've given full lectures on it at LearnStrong.net in our series we call Talks with Walt. I am the hounded slave. I wince at the bite of the dogs. Hell and despair upon me. Crack and again crack the marksman. I clutch the rails of the fence. My gore drips, thinned with the ooze of my skin. I fall on the weeds and stones. The riders spur their unwilling horses, haul close, taunt my dizzy ears, and beat me violently over the head with whipstocks. Agonies are one of my changes of garments. I do not ask the wounded man how he feels. I myself become the wounded man. My hurts turn livid upon me as I lean on a cane and observe. I am the mashed fireman with breastbone broken. Tumbling walls buried me in the debris. Heat and smoke I inspired. I heard the yelling shouts of my comrades. I heard the distant click of their picks and shovels. They have cleared the beams away. They tenderly lift me forth. I lie in the night air in my red shirt. The pervading hush is for my sake. Painless after all, I lie exhausted, but not so unhappy. White and beautiful are the faces around me, and heads are bared of their fire caps. The kneeling crowd fades with the light of the torches. Distant and dead resuscitate. They show as the dial or move as the hands of me. I am the clock myself. In both these poems, obviously, trying to understand or become the wounded. What was a time, to finish at 3B, what was a time that you tried to understand or to become that wounded person? Thank you.